60 Minutes with Lenin.
Hello, I am Leslie Stahl, editor of the... Hi, I am Leslie Stahl, editor of Pravda, the Bolshevik Party newspaper. Today, on 5 Minutes, we'll be interviewing Lenin, also known as Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, the Russian communist revolutionary, politician, and political theorist. He is a Russian lawyer, revolutionary, and the leader of the Bolshevik Party and of the October Revolution. He was the first leader of the USSR and the government that restored Russia in 1917.
Hello, you can call me Lenin.
What influenced you to start being a communist revolutionary?
Well, it mainly started in my hometown of St. Petersburg. My parents were both well educated and my father was a school teacher. Growing up, I attended school and considered myself an excellent student. I was about 17 when my brother was killed for his beliefs. His ideals were the reason I went to politics in the first place.
Wow, that must have had such a huge impact on you at such a young age. Have you been exiled from a country for your thoughts on communists and being a revolutionist along with your beliefs?
I have, yes. After my exile ended in 1900, I went to Western Europe, where I continued my revolutionary activity after the outbreak of the Russian Revolution of 1905. I returned to Russia on April 16, 1917. I returned to Petrograd after a decade of exile to take the reins of the Russian Revolution.
So what do you think of your phrase, peace, land, bread? Can you explain the reasoning behind it?
I was really confident in my own ideals. I believed and still believe that the Russian people deserve better lives. This would be able to own their own property and not to have to fight for food on a daily basis. This proposition is the foundation of something that the Bolsheviks were fighting for.
Were the Bolsheviks finally content when they overthrew the revolutionary government on November 7th, 1917?
No, I still think the Communist Party is unsatisfied. I am sure that they felt accomplished, but I think a perfect government cannot be achieved. Provisional government collapsed once we had attacked on transferred government to Bolshevik-controlled Soviets. They then began nationalizing Russia's economy, industry, and agriculture, which was very good for us Bolsheviks.
Can you explain the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk that was in March of 1918? Okay, cut it.
Alright. None! It took place in the city of Brest-Litovsk and was peace treaty signed with the government of Soviet Russia and Central Powers. It ended Russia's participation in World War I, but in November 11, 1918, armistice ending World War I and marking the Allies' victory over Germany. The treaty was annulled since the war was over.
So what about the Red Army? Before the overthrow, what did you think of Trotsky as a leader?
I thought he was a great candidate. We were both in the Politburo and knew each other for quite some time. However, he later failed in the movement against the policies and rise of Joseph Stalin. And ever since then, he was removed from his power and was exiled, like myself.
Can you describe the brief execution of the Tsar?
Yes, of course. At the time, Nicholas was no longer a monarch and was placed under house arrest with his family by Maximus by the government. After the Bolsheviks came to power, their lives were unjust. Their lives were under strict rules, and talk of putting Nicholas on trial grew more frequent. The Russian Romanov family, Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Tsarina, Alexandra, and their 5 children, were shot in Yekaterinburg on July 17, 1918. Sorry, my mustache. The Tsar and his family were killed by Bolshevik troops. Their bodies were mutilated, burned, and buried in a field called Torezhginobog. Despite the family also suffering the same fate, the Bolsheviks only announced Nicholas's death. The Soviet leaders even denied that the entire Romanov family was dead for 4 years.
What were the secret police?
The secret police were only known as the Cheka. It was created on December 20th, 1917 after the decree that I issued. It was essentially led by Felix Terensky, who was a friend of mine and a Polish aristocrat turned communist. I created this consulate that power after the November 1917 revolution. Years later, many Cheka parties had been formed in various cities, spreading throughout. This was good, yeah, because it could be spread around through all the people. The main task of the Cheka was to hunt down all what became known as enemies of the state and to deal with them.
How do you feel about war communism?
War communism actually was introduced by myself to combat the economic problems brought on by the Civil War in Russia. It was a combination of emergency measures and socialist dogma. I see war communism as a temporary policy that must not be continued. I later changed some of the policy to new economic policy that was again a temporary idea until an appropriate time where the country could go through a cultural revolution and develop an economy based on cooperatives. See, if this were Russia, we could all get these, we don't have to pay for it.
So, why did you select Trotsky as a leader even though he was mistrusted Stalin?
Well, Trotsky was a Marxist revolutionist and theorist and Soviet politician who engineered the transfer of all political powers to the Soviets. He was also the founding leader of the Red Army. Initially, Trotsky was on Stalin's side but was removed from power. I selected him because he had a great intelligence and had the ability to work with military specialists. In 1921, I said that the Trotsky was in love with the organization, but in working politics, he has no clue.
Venture out of Russia for a second. How did you feel about France, Britain, and the US supporting the White Army's cause? What was your reaction?
Well, I was not surprised. Our cause and ideology is far more different from the other countries. People are afraid of change, and communism is a huge change, but it is change that will benefit the people that we are figuring out for, which is what we're fighting for.
But what made you think of that your Red Army had a fight? Okay, stop. But what made you think that your Red Army had a fighting chance? The White Army was supported by two major countries and one that was a global superpower. What made you confident in your victory?
Well, the White Army was too diverse because they had diverse interests. They were favoring monarchism, capitalism, and alternative forms of socialism, each with democratic and anti-democratic variants. My army had one common goal: to achieve communism and fight for what I believe was good for the people.
Why do you think some of the white leaders wanted a star restored, especially with the political influence of three other nations?
Well, like I said, people don't like change. The people who are cowards and lazy do not want change and think that the old ways are the most beneficial. Ever since my brother died, I knew that something had to be different. The people needed to be heard. The people needed a reform. Communism was and is the answer.
All right, I think this is a good place to end. Thank you, Lenin, for your time.
And thank you for listening.